everybody, and welcome to this fantastic session for the Commercial Print Day of the Future Print Virtual Summit. Today, I am very proud to introduce you to Morten Reitoft, who is the Editor-in-Chief of Inkish TV, a content platform for and about the print industry. There, you will find videos about people, events, companies, business, and technology. And with a strong journalistic angle, it finds the stories that it believes can encourage people in the industry. Encouraging by getting them more information and by sharing knowledge. Not only focusing on equipment, but also the business perspective. Morten and his team aim to give business owners of all sites an insight that can inspire the entire business to do more, but also to drive them for the future. In this session, he will discuss how we all want to sell our products and services. We all want to be as profitable as possible. Called the mystery of pricing, Morten will now guide you into the differences in cost, market, and sales prices, and even more critically, the right pricing psychology. The mystery of pricing will be unveiled in this session, and you'll be able to update your toolbox to higher profitability. So without further ado, over to you, Morten. Thanks for joining us.
Brendan, thank you very much for asking me to participate in this wonderful event. So I appreciate that. I always make my titles with a little bit of a smile in the eyes because first of all, you can wonder whether I have the secret tools for the subject. And secondly, you can ask whether I'm in a position where it makes sense to discuss. But I think that the discussing in itself sometimes is very valuable. Well, thank you very much for the very kind introduction, Brennan. I am very honored to be part of the virtual summit this time. Again, I was so pleased and honored to be part of the last virtual summit together with Peter Sommer. He was talking about his successes. I was talking about my failures, and hopefully people learn from that. It's been a replay that has been seen by quite a few people, so I felt very naked because I was talking about how it is to go out of business and how to get on top of that challenge again. And this time I'm going to talk to something that is also very important to me, the mystery of pricing. But before talking about that, I would like to just introduce myself a little bit more details, not because it's that important, but I'm the editor of Inkish. I'm the father to Christine, Mads, and Kasper, and married to Nina. I live just outside Copenhagen, near the beach, and we have a nice house. And I've been in the printing industry since 2000. Before that, I was a marketing director for a Japanese company in the musical industry. And it was very interesting. And you can say, yeah, the two industries are very different. But yes and no. I think some of the challenges we have as an industry is something that you also see in the music industry, because everything is driven by the fact that our societies are rapidly changing. So the reason why I am so interested in pricing and why I call that pricing is a mystery is because there's a few facts that I believe is important to at least understand why pricing is not something that you just do easily. Let's, for example, say that when you give a quote, it's a fact that nobody wins all the quotes they give. There's always a few that say, thank you for your offer, but I have decided otherwise. And that leads to the second thing here. It's also a lot of people who don't know whether their quotes or demands are changed into order at somebody else's printing companies. And are you sure that we know our customers' true potential when it comes to that perspective as well? Because if you look at the potential of a customer, you can say that this customer, we have a revenue of 100,000 euros or whatever it is, but you cannot really know whether that is the full potential of the customer. And when you look at that perspective, you can think, who are my most important customers? Is it the ones with the highest revenue? Is it the ones with the highest profits? Or is it the companies where you have the biggest market share with? Let's say you have a small customer, but you get everything they have. You should be very pleased with that customer, but you should not maybe spend so much time on chasing new revenue from that customer, because that customer is already exploiting his full potential with you guys, right? And then nobody knows if a customer select one of your competitors because of price. So that again is why is pricing a mystery, is because we know that we give offers that we believe is aligned with the needs from the customer. But when we lose a job or the job goes to someone else, we are not always 100% certain that it's because of price or was it because of service or what. I think that sometimes you have people that you go to and ask. So you say, let's, dear customer, why didn't it turn into an order? But I don't know how you feel about it. I feel a little bit, I wouldn't say embarrassed, but I would say that if I have picked another printing company as a supplier, I would maybe sometimes choose to say, well, the job didn't come through, or my customer chose to another side, or some of the excuses that, because nobody really wants to put themselves into an unpleasant situation, and that is maybe something that we should learn from. And that also leads to the last thing, why pricing is a mystery, because we are not even certain that our customers are loyal. You can think that you have a very good relationship with a buyer, but in some companies you have multiple buyers. Do you have a good relationship with all buyers? Do buyers have different preferences for different printing companies? And there's a lot of things to this one. So the mystery of pricing is maybe not so much about the mystery of the pricing itself, but maybe to some extent way more about how do we make sure that these kind of psychology plays roles in the sense of getting into some kind of relationship with the customer. If you and English TV have an interest in this, my good friend Matthew Parker, I think he's well known in the industry. He has made 12 different films about the selling and the psychologies and all these kind of things. You should check them out. So what is a price? Well, there is at least 3 different prices that we should learn from. One of the pricing is the cost price. I think that a lot of printing companies, they consider the cost prices all the time because it consists of paper, consumables, labor, administration, depreciation, marketing, all those things that combines your cost base, and which is what you want to cover from your sales, basically, right? So the cost price is, of course, one thing, and that also leads to the discussion that when you talk about cost, there is at least a few models that you would probably be well aware of. I put 3 of them here. I think the most used one in the printing industry is the one that's called full absorption cost. I will talk about that in a second. Then you have marginal cost, and then you can also have variable cost. Regardless of what model you choose to use, the end result is to, of course, pay the rent, pay the salaries, pay the taxes, pay the papers, the suppliers, the machines, everything you have to do, and have a profit on top of that. So the problem is, how can you spread the cost on your expected cost to all the people that are and all the jobs that you have in your work? And the full absorption cost is used quite a lot because it takes all the cost of your fixed cost and spread it out on the number of jobs. So you have an hourly rate that will give you an estimate on how much money you should make before going break even. The problem with the full absorption cost, especially in times when times are changing, is that the full absorption cost model depends very much on utilization, the variables, and the OEE, or the overall equipment efficiency. Let me give you an example. Let's say that you have invested, let's make it very simple. You invested in one printing machine. It has a price tag on it, and you have a depreciation time over, let's say, 8 years. But in your utilization, you have calculated maybe to use it 50 or 60 or 70% of the potential that you have in your company for whatever number of shifts you have. But imagine that demand drops like we see from, for example, the COVID-19. The utilization decreases quite a lot. So if you use the full absorption cost, you will need to increase your hourly rate. But if you increase your hourly rate on your machine, you will probably be less competitive, and you will probably end up being in a situation where you may not be able to sell as much. On the other hand, if you have too much work or a lot of work to do, you could actually still have a different hourly rate and still make a lot of money on your printing machine. So the full absorption cost is a price model that requires you to be very precise in your utilization, and you have to look at that into a very frequent kind of time span, because that can change all the time. Unfortunately, I know from the printing companies I used to work for that this is not something that you do very often, because there's a lot of work involved with it. There's also a lot of insecurity, because if you, let's say that you change your hourly rate that reflects more the real life situation in your printing company, you could end up in a situation that would lead to price increases with your customers, because your estimators will use that for estimating the prices. Or you will end up in a situation where you can see a lower profit because the gross margin will maybe be influenced by this thing, right? So the questions you should ask yourself: is your cost price really your cost price? Because if you look at it from a perspective where you say, you know the variable cost, you know how much the paper costs, you know how much ink costs, you know how much your labor costs, you know your utility bills and those kind of things, that the variables are relatively fixed. That is something that you know. But the utilization and the depreciation and all those things are not as easy as it maybe sometimes sounds to actually put into the equation to get a real hourly rate. If you think also about how low margins can be profitable, because I think that a lot of people in these times are considering, okay, I can't lower my prices because I need to make money. But if your estimated utilization of your equipment is 50%, but it is actually only 40, then every hour you can sell for whatever cost plus the variable cost will be a profit for you. I know that to some printers this is like, no, it can't be true. And I know for the guys with the people that are working in accounting and in the CFOs, they know I'm right about this. But of course, you should consider the marketing effect of it, because if you lower prices, it can be difficult to ever return to normal pricing. I'm just saying that if you're not utilizing your equipment, you still have to pay the rent, you still have to pay the lease, you still have to pay for some of the labor cost involved with production. So therefore, also low margin jobs can be extremely profitable, even if you use full absorption cost models. Jobs with a zero margin or a negative margin can be profitable in that perspective. And every time we talk about pricing and cost prices, you have to think about what is it that differentiates you from the competition. Is it really your printing equipment, or is it your efficiency? Last week, for example, we had our Learn With Us experience here with Inkish, and one of the people that attended was as a speaker was Anthony Thirlby. He used to work for a printing company that was elected as being one of the most efficient printing companies in the world. But if you look at it, I think that he's not looking so much as price only from a competition or competitive perspective. He's also looking into some of the options you have in order to streamline. So you might remember a couple of slides ago, I wrote the OEE. The OEE is how efficient you drive a machine while it's actually in operation. So the utilization is how much you can operate the machine, and the OEE is how efficient you actually use the machine when it's producing. Those two things are a little different, and these things are both very important to understand. And one thing you should, of course, always consider: if you are in a position where you decide to decrease your margins because you believe you can gain market shares from this, do you think that you can decrease your margins without losing the quality? Because today, I think that quality on the print and the delivery, on the packaging, is something that most customers takes for granted. So you need to have these things in consideration when it comes to the cost base. So my claim is that cost prices in itself are not important, at least not in relation to what the selling price should be. Because as I said before, cost prices is actually just an estimate based under the terms and certain conditions that you have forecasted when you set up your pricing scheme. And the cost prices doesn't say anything about what customers are willing to pay. It says something about maybe the production cost of it, but not what the selling price is. Let me give you another example. If you look at, for example, the postal services of the world, essentially you have a mailman delivering post or magazines or newspapers or advertising to the mailbox. The product is essentially the same. The differentiation of the product is the service level and the volume, and maybe also some requirements on how to deliver it into the stream of the postal services. So I'm just saying that sometimes your product is not really relating so much to the cost, but more to how you can sell it. Clothing is another example. Cloth is very, very inexpensive to produce. But if you look at it, there's the high street textile is sold way higher than the lower. Is it because of the quality? Maybe it's the brand, maybe it's the design of it, but the actual textile may not be very different from something, maybe not the cheapest, but at least from the mid-range textile, right? So in my opinion, the cost price is only a figure where you can afterwards, in your after calculation, figure out what your expected profit you have, or you can decide whether it's more profitable for you to outsource. But because let's say that you have almost full capacity in your printing company, and then you get a job where the margin is very low, but you can buy it from a colleague at a lower price. They may have other equipment, they may have space, they may need the production, so maybe you get a good margin from that. That is a situation where you should really consider these things. So let's talk a little bit about sales prices, because I have tried to emphasize here that sales prices do not relate to cost. Think of it yourself. Again, if you look at some of the things you buy, let's say that you're looking at a flight ticket. Flight tickets are sold at a lot of different prices, but the machines they're flying are the same. The landing slots in Heathrow is the same. The fuel cost is almost the same. So again, the cost base is almost the same, but the pricing is very different, not just in classes, but also from machine to machine, utilization of the network, and all these kind of things. So I am certain that cost and sales price is not related to each other anymore. I'm also quite certain that that was the case in the past, but not anymore. And then I took the same questions as almost the same questions as from the cost base, because will we always lose a job, or should I have written here, if margins are too high? It depends a little bit on what too high is. I think that one of the things that most people sometimes forget is that printing companies are service providers. So one thing is that we deliver a print, which is a paper with some ink on it, folded or bound into a specific product. But if it was only the lowest possible price in the world that was the real game changer, then all of us will be unemployed. There will only be one printing company, because the bigger the volume, the more efficient they can do. So that is not the case. The case is that when we do sell print, maybe most of the price comes from the added value we bring to the process. So if you are a brand owner and you need a lot of help in your decision and in your way of getting orders produced and delivered in a lot of different locations, things like that, of course you pay a higher price for it. So again, high margins is not always the same as losing the job, sorry. So you think about, what is it that makes a customer buy from you? Is it your low prices, or is it the people that you employ? Is it the quality you deliver? Is it your understanding of the customer's need? I think there's a lot of things in these things that you really need to consider in your value proposition. And you ask yourself, what differentiates you from the competition? Well, that is exactly what I'm talking about here. It's the services. It's the understanding of your deliveries. It's all the things that you will need in order to make sure that people understand your competitiveness, right? And then you can say that, can you increase your margins without losing customers? And my claim is, yes, you can. The thing is that if the only thing that you survive on is on low prices, then you always have to focus on how you can become more and more efficient. Because if your customers are only demanding low prices, you will end up in a situation that you will always find a competitor who is trying to beat you on price. And every time a new technology is introduced to the market, you will be potentially a victim for the new technology if you're only looking at price as being the competitiveness in your company. So what you have to think about is what kind of services can you deliver to your customers in order to make sure that you can be valued as a supplier and that can be justifying the prices that you're offering. One of the things, I used to work as a sales manager as well, and one of the things I often heard from my salespeople was that we lost a job because the market price was way lower than our price. Let's try to look a little bit about onto what a market price is. Because market prices, what is it? I have given an example here. This is from Expedia CEO UK. And I have just asked for a price today from London to Los Angeles. I think that all of us know these kind of services. You enter your details, and when you click search, then you will get a list of different options on different prices. And you can see in this incident here, the sorting is by price lowest. And you can see that if you want to be 38 hours and 15 minutes underway to Los Angeles, you pay £457. I think that the price is pretty cheap, but I would probably I like to add £10 to that equation and then save 11 hours on the travel if you look at the offer below. So we are always using also prices in our daily life to justify our purchasing. And I think that this next page, maybe that will surprise you a little bit, because this is the exact same methodology, but this is from the German website called druckpreis.de, which means print price, which is basically comparing all the online printers. I don't know if it's all the online printers, but a vast number of online printers in Germany. So when you enter the details of what kind of job you need, what kind of paper you need, what kind of print technology you need, you will get a list of printing companies and their offerings. So that will bypassing. So everything about market prices depends a little bit on what you're looking for, because my claim before was that it's not always the lowest price that gives you the work. And this example here with druckpreis.de, I've tried it myself, and some of the printers I used in the testing of it was so bad in delivery, in quality, that I would never use them again. So I learned my lesson in the fact that I don't want to buy something that is too cheap, and I also sometimes need the service. And this is some of the things I think people should think about. But if you define what the market price is, it's essentially market price equals your price equals sales price. Because you cannot sell over market price if the market price is your price. And market price is the price your customer is willing to pay. So that means that if you are in a situation where the product is perceived as a value X, then you can't sell it for X plus anything. Because if the customer doesn't, so you have to let the customer understand that your value is higher. And the way you can do that is maybe not so much on quality anymore, because that is by most printing companies the standard today to deliver high quality. But as I said before, it could be the service level that the customer is requiring. It could be also the advisory you're giving the customers in order to make sure that they understand why you are a better supplier than your competitor, and all these kind of things. So the market price, in my opinion, is a relation between the perceived value, service, and actual money. That, again, is important to remember. So when your salespeople come home and say that this is a problem with market price, maybe you should give training to all your salespeople, really understanding where you differentiate. And if you go, I met once a sales guy from a printing company, and the first thing he said to me when he entered my office, he said to me, "We are the cheapest printing company in Denmark." And I was like, yeah, well, let's try that. So I gave him a few quotes and asked him to give me a quote on these ones. And he was not the cheapest one. And I said to him, "But you're not the cheapest one. So why do you try to sell yourself as being the cheapest if you're not?" And you can always find somebody who wants to beat you in price. There's always somebody, especially during these times, that are more hungry than most. So that is just a fact, right? Then you also have to understand that market prices, if there is such thing, is something that differs from order to order and from customer to customer, because you end up in a situation where everything, when it comes to market prices, if there was such thing, it would also be in the equation. You have to think about it as something in supply and demand. If you are a printing company that have utilized full capacity, why should you sell something cheap, right? Maybe you would be able to squeeze something in between, and maybe you will do that cheaply because you have a customer that you are very happy with and you want to serve them and things like that. But if a new customer just pops in and just want the lowest price, why should you give it if the utilization is close to 100%? So that is something that I would really think about if I were you. Second last slide. This is unfortunately not something I have done. This is from the Federation of Printers in Sweden. A couple of years ago, they did a very interesting survey among 2,000 printing companies or companies over a 77 years period, where they, together with a research company, Bisnode, made something they called a simpler model, where you can actually compare companies across different sectors of print. And this is interesting to be smarter with, because you have good competitiveness but low growth, low competitiveness and negative growth, good competitiveness and growth, and lower competitiveness but growth. And if you look at these typical kinds of companies, you can see that unfortunately quite a few of the companies that you also may be representing is not really good at any of these things. And all of these things is because we are changing from being a specialized market into being a commodity market. And you can see the ones that are relatively successful is the niche printers, the bookshops, the large format printers, and funny enough, print brokers. And you can think about why is it that print brokers is in this segment. And I'm not advocating for print brokers at all, but I'm just saying that they don't have a capital cost of printing equipment. And they are very agile because they can change with the customer's demand very rapidly. And some of the things that we have been talking on here on English is also that the situation for a lot of people these days is that if you look at subscription models from Heidelberg, if you look at how some of the digital print vendors like HP and Canon and things like that, especially when it comes to inkjet devices, are changing the business models to be variables, it essentially will end up giving them a similar situation where they have sharing the risk of their how the market is developing. And I just think this is also something very interesting to understand. If you want to see the film, maybe you can go to English TV and you just search for Grafiske Fortolkning or Grafiska. Then you will be able to see we have made 2 films on this subject. And though Grafiske Fortolkning is from Sweden, both films are in English. So I think you should be able to understand that. And of course, always be curious, and you can get more information about all the things I've been talking about on English TV and English News. And I think this concludes what I wanted to talk about. And I hope you found it interesting. And I hope that that if you have any questions or anything, just reach out in the chat. I will be happy to share my thoughts. And if anybody wants to have more personal guidance, you're always welcome to write to me on LinkedIn. Quite a few people do that from time to time, so you're more than welcome. So I hope this was an inspiration for you. Thank you very much anyway.
Morten, thank you again for your time. Thank you for creating that excellent presentation. And I thank you very much to all of our delegates for watching, and I look forward to seeing you on the next session for Future Print.